She looks at you and says, "I don't know. Something just feels missing." Pause. No fight, no clear accusation. Just that sentence. And somehow, it hits harder than anger ever could. Because you replay everything in your head. What you did, what you didn't do, what you should change. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. When a woman says something is missing, she's not talking about effort, she's not talking about attention, and she's not even talking about you, at least not in the way you think. She's describing a felt absence, a shift that happened quietly, long before the words showed up. And if you misunderstand what that sentence really means, every attempt to fix it will push her further away. In this video, I'll show you what "something is missing" actually points to psychologically, why men almost always respond the wrong way, and what this phrase silently predicts if nothing changes. Stay with me, because this is one of the most misunderstood moments in modern dating. When a woman says, "something is missing," most men hear it as a verdict, like a final judgment on their worth, effort, or masculinity. But psychologically, that sentence isn't a conclusion. It's a signal, and signals don't appear suddenly. They emerge when something has been shifting for a long time, quietly. Here's the part most men never realize. Women often feel emotional changes before they can explain them. Not because they're unclear, but because attraction isn't processed logically. It's experienced. So when she says, "I don't know what it is," she's not being evasive. She's translating a sensation into language that was never designed to hold it. That's why this phrase shows up so often in otherwise good relationships. Nothing dramatic happened. No betrayal. No big argument. Just a slow internal realization that something doesn't feel the same anymore. And this is crucial. It's rarely about what you stopped doing. It's about what stopped being felt. Connection can remain. Comfort can remain. Even affection can remain. But attraction doesn't survive on stability alone. And when emotional polarity fades, when the dynamic becomes predictable, emotionally flat, or overly managed, the mind searches for words. "Something is missing" is the closest approximation she has. Not an attack, not a strategy, not manipulation, a perception she hasn't fully understood yet, but can no longer ignore. And if you treat that sentence as a problem to argue against or fix immediately, you miss what it's actually pointing toward. Because before attraction disappears externally, it fades internally, quietly, gradually, and almost always unnoticed, until it has a name. When a man hears "something is missing," his mind immediately goes into problem-solving mode. He starts scanning for fixes. More attention, more affection, more conversations, more reassurance, maybe even more compliance. Because from a logical perspective, if something feels wrong, you add more of what you think caused things to work before. But this is where the misunderstanding begins. Most men assume attraction fades because of neglect. So they respond with effort. They talk more. They explain themselves more. They try to prove commitment more clearly. And none of it works. Not because effort is bad, but because effort aimed at the wrong layer creates pressure instead of desire. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Attraction is not maintained by doing more. It's maintained by being anchored. The more a man starts reacting to her uncertainty, the more his emotional center shifts away from himself and toward managing her feelings. And that shift is felt immediately. What she experiences isn't reassurance. It's a loss of gravity. Instead of feeling drawn, she feels responsible. Instead of curiosity, she feels predictability. This is why logical explanations fail so consistently. You can explain your intentions perfectly and still make the attraction worse. Because what's missing was never information. It was emotional tension, direction, presence. And the more a man tries to secure her emotionally, the more he unconsciously confirms the very absence she's sensing. So when men say, "I don't understand, I'm doing everything right," they usually are. They're just doing it from the wrong place. Because attraction doesn't respond to persuasion, it responds to orientation. And when that orientation shifts from self-directed to approval-seeking, no amount of communication can compensate for it. When a woman says, "Something is missing," she's not pointing to a behavior. She's pointing to a feeling that no longer appears when you're around. And that distinction changes everything. What's missing is not love. It's not connection. It's not even attraction in the way most men imagine it. What's missing is emotional polarity, the felt sense that something is being pulled forward, that there's movement, tension, direction. Attraction doesn't come from comfort alone. It comes from contrast, from the feeling that the man she's with is grounded in himself, moving towards something and not orienting his emotional state around her reactions. Over time, many relationships quietly lose this, not through conflict, but through flattening. Conversations become predictable. Emotional responses become expected. The dynamic becomes safe, but static. And safety without tension doesn't feel alive. Here's the key line most men need to hear. She doesn't miss what you do. She misses how she feels when she's with you. She misses the emotional spark that came from not knowing exactly where things would go, from sensing your inner direction, from feeling drawn rather than accommodated. When that internal gravity fades, the mind looks for explanations, but there usually isn't one concrete cause. Just a quiet realization that the relationship feels emotionally complete, but not compelling. And that's why this phrase is so confusing. Because nothing is technically wrong, yet something essential is absent. Not drama, not chaos, but depth through polarity. When everything becomes mutual, balanced, and managed, desire has nowhere to stretch. And attraction, unlike connection, requires stretch. So when she says something is missing, what she's really sensing is that the emotional field between you no longer has tension, no pull, no mystery, no directional energy, just stability. And stability alone doesn't sustain desire. What causes this shift almost never looks dramatic. There's no single moment where attraction suddenly disappears, no argument you can point to, no obvious mistake. Instead, it happens gradually, quietly, often in the name of being a good partner. At first, you're grounded. You move from your own direction. Your emotional state doesn't rise and fall with her reactions. But over time, something changes. You start anticipating instead of responding, explaining instead of expressing, adjusting instead of deciding. Not because you're weak, but because you care. And slowly, almost invisibly, your center moves from internal to relational. You begin checking how she feels before fully occupying how you feel. You prioritize harmony over truth, stability over tension. And none of this feels wrong. In fact, it feels responsible, mature, loving. But here's the psychological cost. When a man stops moving from his own internal gravity, the emotional field flattens. She doesn't feel pushed away. She feels nothing pulling her in. Because desire isn't created by agreement. It's created by presence with direction. This is where many men get confused. They think attraction fades because they became careless, but often it fades because they became too careful, too predictable, too emotionally available in ways that removed contrast. Not cold, not distant, just overly centered on maintaining the relationship, instead of inhabiting themselves within it. And the moment you stop being a force she can orient toward, she begins searching internally for what changed. That search eventually turns into a sentence. Something feels missing. Not because you withdrew, but because you slowly disappeared behind accommodation. One of the most frustrating parts of this moment is that she can't clearly explain what's wrong. You ask her to be specific. You want examples, a reason you can work with. And the more you ask, the more vague she becomes. That feels unfair, but psychologically, it makes perfect sense. Attraction isn't experienced as a thought. It's experienced as a state, as a bodily sensation, a felt orientation towards someone. And when that state changes, language lags behind. She feels the absence before she understands it. Just like you feel tension in a room before you know why it's there. So when she says, "I don't know how to explain it," she's not withholding information. She's translating something intuitive into words that were never built for it. This is where many men unintentionally make things worse. They push for clarity. They ask for reassurance. They try to reason through it, but pressure for explanation forces her into her rational mind, the very place attraction doesn't live. Instead of feeling drawn, she starts analyzing. Instead of sensing desire, she starts managing discomfort. And now, the relationship becomes a discussion about feelings rather than an experience of them. Here's the hard truth. If she could explain it cleanly, she wouldn't need to say, "Something is missing." That sentence only appears when the feeling is real. But the language hasn't caught up yet. And the more a man demands clarity in that moment, the more he confirms the imbalance she's already sensing. Not because he's wrong to want understanding, but because understanding isn't what restores attraction. Presence does, direction does, and until that returns, no explanation will ever feel sufficient. When a woman says, "Something is missing," it's not an ending, it's a signal. But like all signals, it only helps if it's recognized. If it's ignored or misunderstood, the shift continues. Not outwardly at first, internally. What usually follows isn't a breakup. It's emotional disengagement. She shares less, initiates less, feels less compelled to reach toward you, not out of spite, not to punish, but because the emotional pull has weakened. This is why many men feel blindsided later. From the outside, everything still looked fine. There were no fights, no ultimatums, but inside, she had already begun detaching. Here's the important part. This phrase doesn't mean she's already gone. It means she's still checking. Checking whether something will shift, whether the dynamic will change, whether the feeling will return. And that window matters, because attraction doesn't collapse all at once. It fades in stages. First, curiosity disappears, then emotional investment, then physical desire. By the time behavior changes become obvious, the internal decision has often already been made. That's why trying to fix things after distance appears, feels so ineffective. The moment for change was earlier when the signal was still being offered. And here's the crucial distinction. Ignoring this phrase doesn't cause the loss. Responding to it incorrectly does. Chasing, over-explaining, trying to secure reassurance. All of those actions communicate the same thing, that your emotional center has moved outside of yourself, and that confirms the absence she's already sensing. So this sentence isn't a threat, it's a checkpoint, a moment where the trajectory can still change, but only if it's understood at the right level. So the real question becomes this: once something feels missing, can attraction return? The answer is yes, but not in the way most men try to make it happen. Attraction isn't restored by convincing, it's not restored by reassurance, and it's not restored by trying to be better in the ways you think she wants. Those approaches all come from the same place: reaction. And reaction is what caused the imbalance in the first place. Restoration begins with a shift back to self-orientation. Not withdrawal, not emotional distance, but grounded presence. It means reclaiming your direction, internally first, moving from what you value, what you're building, what you choose, not from how she's feeling in any given moment. When a man recenters himself, something subtle happens. The emotional field changes. There's less pressure, less management, more space. And space is where curiosity reappears. This is the part most men underestimate. Attraction often returns not because you do something new, but because you stop doing what flattened it. You stop over-explaining, stop seeking reassurance, stop orienting your emotional state around her responses. And in that absence of pressure, a different quality emerges: steadiness. Not performative confidence, not indifference, but quiet, internal gravity. That's what she responds to. Not because it guarantees an outcome, but because it restores polarity. And polarity is what allows desire to stretch again. So yes, attraction can return, but only when the man she's with feels like someone moving through his own life, not someone waiting to be chosen inside hers.